All right, so get ready for a deep dive into the kind of hidden world of pyrotechnics, because today we're talking about a job I bet you've never even thought about.
Oh, is it my turn already?
Yeah, get ready. They love when we jump right in.
Right, of course. Makes sense.
Okay, so as I was saying, a job you've probably never even thought about, a dry house attendant.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, so this fascinating batch of info from RoleCatcher, it's really something.
I was really interested in this one.
Yeah, and honestly, my first thought was, wait, there's a whole career dedicated to drying things that explode. I mean, who knew, right?
Yeah, and it's not as simple as it sounds. It's not just about keeping those fireworks dry, though that is, super important.
Of course.
It's about, well, it's really about understanding what those pyrotechnics need, environmentally speaking. You know how, like, different materials, they react to humidity differently?
I never even thought about that.
It's about ensuring that they can be handled safely throughout the entire process, drying and storing the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit for our listeners, because I am a little lost.
Sure.
What does that actually look like day to day? What does a dry house attend like? What do they actually do all day?
Okay, so picture this. You walk into a room, right, and it's filled with all these racks. But not just any racks. These are racks of pyrotechnics.
Oh,
Everything from, like, those huge fireworks shells you see at, like, a 4th of July show?
yeah, those are huge.
To, like, the tiny little charges that make airbags in your car deploy.
Oh, wow. I never even thought about those.
Yeah, so your job, it's making sure that entire room, that entire environment, the temperature, the humidity, all of it, it's perfectly calibrated.
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
Oh, it is, because you have to keep those pyrotechnics stable, make sure they're effective.
So it's definitely not as simple as just like running a dehumidifier and calling it a day.
Exactly, yeah. Think of it less like, doing your laundry, and more like you're in a science lab.
Oh, wow.
Because even a small mistake, like if the humidity's off by even a little bit,
Well, it happens.
well, you could end up with a firework finale that's a total dud instead of a big bang.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and we are talking about potentially costing a company thousands of dollars.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like attention to detail is like the most important thing here.
Absolutely.
What else? What else does a typical day look like for someone in this line of work?
So a lot of it is record keeping. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot.
Seriously?
Yes, seriously. Like, according to this RoleCatcher guide, they're constantly writing stuff down.
Like what?
Every tiny change in temperature, if the humidity goes up or down, even just moving those pyrotechnics from one place to another, it all gets logged, it all gets documented.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. And it's not just about, following the rules, which is important, but it's also about being able to look back, if something goes wrong.
That makes sense.
You have to be able to trace it back, see what happened, and make sure that they're always, always maintaining those safety protocols.
So it's not just the hands-on stuff, there's a whole administrative side to it as well.
Precisely.
So what about the skills, and the qualifications? What do you actually have to become a dry house attendant?
Well, one thing that really surprised me going through this material you sent,
Yeah.
you don't actually need a formal degree. Isn't that wild?
Really? I would have thought you'd need some background in chemistry or something like that, dealing with explosives and all.
It definitely helps, I'm sure, having some kind of science background is a plus.
Right.
But it's not like the main thing that employers are looking for.
Oh, interesting.
Most of the training, you get it on the job, You're learning from these experienced technicians.
So it's all about like hands-on learning as you go.
Pretty much. And you learn about the different kinds of pyrotechnics, all the science behind how to store them, all the safety protocols, all that good stuff.
So they're really looking for someone who's got a knack for details, they're really into safety procedures, and they're willing to learn.
You got it. Exactly.
Cool.
And this is a field you got to be okay with constant learning because things change.
Oh, I bet.
Regulations, they're always changing. New technologies are popping up left and right, and even just the types of pyrotechnics they use.
Wow. So it never gets boring.
Nope. So you got to be adaptable, you got to stay updated, always looking to improve your skills.
So this is perfect for someone who likes to work with their hands and they love to learn new things. This could be it, right?
It could be a great fit. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about that then, the career path itself, the whole shebang. What are the pros and cons of a career, as a dry house attendant? What can someone realistically expect? Let's talk job security, salary, opportunities for advancement, the whole 9 yards.
All right. Well, like with any job, there's good and bad, right?
Well, of course.
Let's start with the good stuff, the positives.
Yeah, hit me.
One of the biggest pros, and RoleCatcher really emphasized this, is job security.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this pyrotechnics industry, it's not going anywhere. People love fireworks, and someone's got to pack those airbags.
That's true. I never thought about it like that. But you're right. Those airbags aren't going to pack themselves.
Exactly.
So there's definitely like a level of stability there that's good to know.
For sure.
Okay, what about moving up? Is this like a dead-end job, or can you actually, advance?
Oh, no, it's not a dead end at all. Definitely not.
Oh, cool.
You can go from, like, a junior attendant, just starting out,
Right.
to a senior role. Maybe you end up supervising a whole team.
Wow, so you can move up?
Yep, you could even manage an entire dry house, like the whole facility.
No way.
Yeah, and then there's also the opportunity to specialize, which is pretty cool.
What do you mean?
So, like, some dry house attendants, they really focus on a specific type of pyrotechnics.
Oh,
Or they might work in a certain industry, like some of them work with special effects for movies.
that's so cool.
Right, or some of them, they specialize in those controlled demolitions, like they blow up buildings and stuff.
That's why.
So there's definitely room to grow. You can find your niche. It's a pretty diverse field.
So it's not just about fireworks. Then there's a whole world of pyrotechnics out there. I love that.
Exactly, and each one has its own, its own challenges, its own rewards. It's pretty neat.
This is blowing my mind. All right, so we've got job security, we've got room for advancement, and way more industries than I ever would have thought.
It's pretty amazing.
Right. But we'd be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't talk about, the downsides, the elephant in the room, or maybe we should say the exploding elephant in the room, given the circumstances.
Right, of course.
What about the challenges? What are the drawbacks that someone who's thinking about this career they should be aware of?
Yeah, you're right. It's not all, glamorous explosions and cool gadgets like you see in the movies.
Right.
The RoleCatcher guide, it's really upfront about how physically demanding it is.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, this is a job where you are on your feet for a long time, and you're often in places that are hot, noisy, dusty, the whole works.
So not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
No, definitely not. Or for anyone with sensitive sinuses, I'd imagine.
I can only imagine.
And then there's the whole, repetitive tasks thing. That can get old for some people.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of the job is just, careful monitoring, making tiny adjustments, all that meticulous record keeping we talked about.
Right.
It's a lot of the same stuff, day in and day out.
Okay, so you're saying if you're someone who needs constant excitement, variety, maybe this isn't the job for you.
Probably not. It's a different kind of excitement,
Yeah, it's more about that satisfaction of a job well done, knowing you're keeping people safe, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Those are the really important things in this job.
Yeah.
You got to be the kind of person who finds that fulfilling, that precision, the attention to detail, those aren't glamorous, but that they're essential when you're dealing with something that could be dangerous.
Absolutely. You don't want to mess around with explosives.
Not at all.
So for our listener who's maybe, weighing those pros and cons right now, trying to decide if this is the right career path.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most important thing for them to think about?
I think it comes down to this. Does meticulous work, really detailed work, does that make you happy?
Okay.
Do you value safety above everything else? And are you excited to really learn something specific, like become an expert in this very niche field?
That's a good point.
If that's you, then yeah, a career as a dry house attendant, it could be a great fit.
Yeah.
It's stable, you can make a difference in all kinds of industries, and you get to work with your hands. It's technical, and yeah, it could be exciting too,
That's a great way to put it. I like that.
Thanks.
Now, the RoleCatcher guide, it also had some sample interview questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For people who want to be dry house attendants.
I bet those are interesting.
They were really interesting. And I'm curious, did any of them stand out to you in particular?
There were a few, yeah. They really made me think about what this job actually entails,
Yeah.
One that stuck with me, it was, how do you prioritize tasks when everything's happening at once and you have all these deadlines?
Oh, that's a good one. Because again, safety is super important, but so are those deadlines, especially if you're working on a movie set or a demolition project where timing is everything.
Exactly. A good dry house attendant, they have to be able to balance those things. Keep everyone safe, but also get things done on time.
So you can't be someone who freaks out under pressure.
No, you need to think clearly. when things get crazy, which actually reminds me of another question they asked.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
It was something like, can you tell me about a time you had to solve a problem, but you didn't have any instructions?
Oh, that's a good one. You got to think on your feet.
Exactly, because things don't always go as planned. That's just life.
Right.
And sometimes you're going to come across something that's not in the manual.
Oh.
So you got to figure it out. You got to be resourceful, but you always got to do it safely.
It's like that saying, I can't remember who said it, but it's like, no plan survives contact with the enemy, or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Except in this case, the enemy is like surprise humidity, or the power goes out, or they
Yeah.
need a certain explosive like right now.
Exactly. You never know what you're going to get, and that's part of what makes it interesting.
Speaking of interesting, I've got to say, I am so impressed with RoleCatcher. They really go in depth with their career guides.
They do a great job, I agree.
It's not just like, here's a job, go get it. They actually want you to understand the career, you know?
It's so helpful.
Yeah, they lay out the skills, the day-to-day stuff, even like the questions they might ask you in an interview. It's amazing.
It's really valuable, especially for a job like this. I mean, who even knew this job existed?
Right. It really shows you how important it is to have resources like RoleCatcher. Because you might find a job you'd love that you never even knew about.
Absolutely. I love that they highlight those unconventional careers.
Me too. And speaking of unconventional, you mentioned that you don't always need a degree for this job.
Right.
But what about someone who really likes the technical side? Like they really want to get into the nitty-gritty of pyrotechnics.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Are there like special certifications or something they could do to really boost their skills, you know?
That is a fantastic question. And you know what? You are in luck. Because while most people do learn on the job, there are totally these special certifications, even educational programs, if you want to go that route.
No way, get out of here.
I'm serious. For those who really want to nerd out on the technical stuff, it's out there.
Like what kind of training are we talking about here?
So there are organizations, like one example is the Pyrotechnics Guild International.
Okay.
And they offer these certification programs for all levels, from like handling those little fireworks you get at the store to designing those massive displays.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. And these programs, they cover all sorts of things, like the chemistry behind pyrotechnics, safety regulations, even the physics of how they actually work. It's pretty wild.
So if you're someone who loves to know how things work, this could be a cool path to check out.
Exactly. It's not just about following the rules, but really understanding why those rules exist in the first place.
Right. I love that.
And that deeper understanding, it can really help you, especially if you want to move up in your career or if you want to specialize in something specific.
This is blowing my mind, I'm not going to lie.
It's pretty cool, right?
We thought this was going to be like a simple job, but it turns out there's so much to being a dry house attendant. It's amazing.
It really is. You've got the technical stuff, the attention to detail, that focus on safety. It's a lot more than meets the eye.
And you know what? It just goes to show you, sometimes the most important work happens behind the scenes.
So true.
It's these jobs we never really think about, but they're keeping us safe. They're making things happen. Pretty awesome.
I love that we get to shine a light on these careers.
Me too. And you know what else? These kinds of jobs, they can be really rewarding for the right person. Someone who loves precision, someone who likes to work with their hands, and definitely someone who loves to keep learning new things.
Absolutely. You said it.
Who would have thought that drying things could be so complicated, so technical, and, dare I say, so explosive?
It's been a pretty explosive deep dive for sure.
It really has. And for our listeners, if you're as fascinated by this as we are, which I have a feeling you are, you have to check out the full career guide over at RoleCatcher.
It's definitely worth a read.
They have so much info on dry house attendants. Yeah. Plus, they have a ton of other careers, stuff you probably never even heard of.
You might just find your next dream job.
Exactly. You never know. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring.
Yeah, those explosions definitely make more sense now, I gotta admit. A big budget action movie, a little more exciting than a mine.
Right. But those explosions, they wouldn't be nearly as cool without someone behind the scenes making sure those pyrotechnics are good to go.
That's true.
They need that perfect humidity level, otherwise you risk those duds happening right on set.
Oh man, yeah, that would be bad.
It would be a nightmare. You'd have to delay everything, reshoot. It would cost a fortune.
So even though a dry house attendant might not be the one yelling fire in the hole, there's still a huge part of those, like, iconic movie moments.
Exactly. They're the unsung heroes of those big explosions.
I like it.
And it doesn't stop there. There are even more applications than we've talked about.
Oh, yeah. Like, well, there's the aerospace industry. That's a big one.
Aerospace. Wow. Okay, I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, they use pyrotechnics for all sorts of things, like emergency escape systems, even deploying satellites.
No way. That's wild.
Yeah, it's a career path that reaches a lot further than you might think.
This is really blowing my mind. So we've got job security, we've got room to move up, and we've got a wider range of industries involved than I ever would have imagined.
It's pretty impressive, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the downsides. Every job has them.
Of course, of course.
So what about the challenges? What are the drawbacks that someone who's thinking about this career should really be aware of?
You're right. It's not all, you know, glamorous explosions and cool gadgets like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The RoleCatcher guide, it's very upfront about how physical this job can be.
Really?
Oh, yeah, you're going to be on your feet a lot, long hours, and the environments that can be tough, hot, noisy, dusty, you name it.
So not for someone who, gets tired easily or has a dust allergy?
Probably not the best fit, no, or anyone with sensitive sinuses, I'd imagine.
Oh, for sure. I can only imagine.
And then there's the whole repetitive task thing. That can be a drag for some people.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you mean, though?
Well, think about it. A lot of the job is just, watching those gauges, making sure everything's okay, making those tiny adjustments, all that record keeping we talked about. It's a lot of the same stuff every single day.
So if you're someone who thrives on, variety and excitement, maybe this isn't it.
It might not be the best fit. No, it's a different kind of excitement, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's more about, the satisfaction of a job well done.
Yeah.
That feeling of knowing you're keeping people safe.
Exactly. Exactly. And those are incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. Those are at the heart of this job.
Right.
But you have to be the kind of person who really gets fulfillment from that, from the precision, the attention to detail. Those things might not sound glamorous, but they're absolutely crucial when you're dealing with, stuff that could be dangerous.
Absolutely. You can't mess around with explosives, that's for sure.
Whoa, not at all. One little mistake could be disastrous.
So for our listener who's out there right now, weighing those pros and cons, trying to figure out if this is the career path for them,
Yeah.
what would you say is, the most important thing for them to think about? What's the big question they need to ask themselves?
I think it all comes down to this. Do you find satisfaction in doing things really, really carefully?
Okay, I like that. Attention to detail for sure.
Exactly. Do you put safety above everything else? And are you actually excited to learn about this one very specific thing?
So become an expert in this niche field.
Yes, exactly. Become a true pyrotechnician, at least when it comes to the drying and storage side of things.
Yeah, right. I like that.
Because if that's you, if you can answer yes to those questions, then this could be a really great career for you. It's stable. You can make a real difference in so many industries. And you get to work with your hands. It's technical. And yeah, it can definitely be exciting in its own way.
That is a fantastic way to put it. I love that it's all about finding the right fit, finding what you're passionate about.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe this is someone's passion and they don't even know it yet.
That's so true. Now, I was looking back at the RoleCatcher guide.
Yeah. What else caught your eye?
Well, they have those sample interview questions, which are amazing.
Oh, right. Those are gold.
They really are. And one that stood out to me was, how do you prioritize tasks in a fast-paced environment with multiple deadlines?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's getting right to the heart of it.
Because, again, safety is paramount, obviously, but so are those deadlines, especially when you're working on a film set or a demolition project. Timing is everything.
It absolutely is. You have to be able to think on your feet, and that's something else that came up in those interview questions.
What was that?
There was one can you describe a time you had to solve a problem without clear instructions?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one.
Right. It shows you that they're looking for someone who can handle those curveballs, someone who can think critically and figure things out.
It's like that old saying, I know I've heard it a million times, but it's something like, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
Right. Plans change. You got to adapt.
Exactly, except in this case, the enemy is unexpected humidity, right, or a power outage, or they need a certain type of explosive, 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. And those unexpected challenges, that's part of what makes this job so interesting. You never know what each day is going to bring.
And speaking of interesting challenges, I have to say, I am seriously impressed with RoleCatcher and the level of detail they put into these career guides.
They do amazing work. I always recommend them to people.
It's not just about finding a job. It's about understanding the whole career path, the skills you need, the day-to-day reality of it all, and they even tell you what questions to expect in an interview. It's incredible.
It's so valuable, especially for those careers that most people don't even know exist,
Right. It's like opening a door to a whole new world of possibilities.
Exactly. And it shows how important resources like RoleCatcher are because they're helping people explore those unconventional career options and find work that they're actually passionate about.
Absolutely. And speaking of unconventional, you mentioned that you don't always need a formal degree for this job.
Right, right. A lot of it is on-the-job training.
But what about those people who are really interested in the more technical aspects, the science behind the pyrotechnics? Are there specialized certifications or educational pathways they could pursue, something to really enhance their skills and knowledge?
There are. There are. It's pretty cool, actually.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? What kind of specialized training is out there?
Well, for example, there's the Pyrotechnics Guild International. They're pretty big in the industry.
Okay, I've heard of them, I think.
Yeah, and they offer these certification programs for all different levels of expertise. Like you could learn how to handle those little fireworks you get at the store,
Right.
all the way up to designing those massive displays they have at like theme parks and stuff.
That's amazing. So you can really, like, climb the ladder with those certifications?
Exactly, and they cover all sorts of cool stuff in those programs, like pyrotechnic chemistry, all about the safety regulations, even the physics of how these things actually work. It's pretty wild.
So for our listener who loves to, like, geek out on the science behind things,
Yeah.
that's definitely worth looking into.
Totally, because it's not just about, following the instructions, it's about understanding the why, the how, the whole shebang.
Right, right. I love that. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly. And that deeper understanding, it can really give you an edge, especially if you want to move up in your career or if you want to focus on something really specific within pyrotechnics.
It's like anything else. The more you know, the further you can go.
100%. It's all about constantly learning and growing in this field.
This has been eye-opening. I got to say, we thought this was going to be a pretty straightforward job, but being a dry house attendant, it's way more complex than it seems.
Oh, for sure. It's way more than meets the eye. And it just goes to show you there are so many interesting careers out there that most people don't even know about.
And so true, we get stuck in our own little bubbles, but when you step outside of that, it's amazing what you can find.
And this job, it's a perfect example of that. It's technical, it's detail-oriented, and it plays a crucial role in so many different industries.
And it's a reminder that sometimes the most important work happens kind of behind the scenes.
Absolutely. The unsung heroes, that's what we like to call them.
I love that. And for our listeners, if you're as intrigued by this as we are, and I have a feeling you are, you've got to check out the full career guide from RoleCatcher.
It's seriously impressive. They've got all the details you could ever want.
They really do. They cover dry house attendants in depth. Plus, they've got tons of other careers to explore. You might just find your dream job.
It happens.
It does. It really does. You never know where your path might lead you. That's what's so exciting about life.
Couldn't agree more. So keep an open mind, keep exploring. You never know what you might discover.
Well said. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of dry house attendants. It's been a blast, literally.
It has. Until next time.
See you then.